Good day to you, my learners. This is your teacher of civics, Mr. Mlenga, and I want to introduce you to civics grade 8. So I'll run you through some topics that we are going to discuss together in civics grade 8. So our first topic will be political development of Zambia. Then we shall look at governance systems of Zambia, then the constitution, citizenship, political organization, elections. Shall also look at the central government and local government. Then our last topic will be the House of Chiefs in grade 8. Now, we're going to begin with the political development of Zambia as our first topic. Now, when we look at the political development of Zambia as our first topic, it is very important that we first of all define the concept of civic education. What is civic education? Civic education is the study of our political, social, and cultural, as well as economical environment, meaning that civic education is not limited just to look at the political aspects. It looks at both the political as well as the cultural aspects, including the economical environment. So it is a wide concept. Now, why is civic education important? Now, civic education is important because it helps you to understand how to interact with people and organizations that govern your community and the country. So, civic education opens up your mind to know how you can interact with people. It also helps to form a competent, active, and responsible citizen. So, when you go through this course of civic education, the expectation is that you become a competent, active, and responsible citizen out there. Now, civic education also enables citizens to be aware of their fundamental rights and freedoms. It also helps to produce learners who can express one's own ideas freely, exercise tolerance for other people's views as well. So that's the importance. Then it is also used as a tool to address important emerging issues like domestic violence, drug abuse, and HIV and AIDS. So all these concepts are discussed in civic education. So civic education is a very, very important subject that each and every individual is expected to undergo. Now, let's get straight into our main concept today. The concept of Zambia's path to independence. Where did we come from as a nation? What were we called as a people before we became, Zambia? That's what I want us to discuss. Before we reached where we are today, what people were we? Now, one thing I want you to understand first of all is that there were three phases, or should we say there are three main phases of Zambia's political path. Number one, the pre-colonial period. Now, when we say pre-colonial, we mean the time before the colonial masters came. The word just itself, pre, means before. So when we say pre-colonial, we mean before the colonial masters came. So we're looking at the time before 1890s. So this is to signify that the colonial masters came to the land we now call Zambia in the 1890s. So before 1890s, there were no colonial masters. Instead, we lived in villages like this picture is indicating, which were controlled by kings and queens. So here is a king with his subjects. Now, apart from the colonial period, we now have the colonial period itself. Now, this is a time when the colonial masters came. These colonial masters we are talking about the Europeans who came to rule us in Africa. Now, this is the period between 1890s and 1964. So the colonial masters were in the land we now call Zambia between 1890s and 1964. So here is a British man broadcasting or trying to have a radio program with a few native people, with these two Zambians. So at this time, we had the white people now ruling the black people. We now have the post-colonial period. When we say post, we mean after. So when we say the post-colonial period, we mean the period after the colonial period, the time when we got independent, in short. So this is from 1964 to present day. I'm sure you are all aware that we got independent as a nation in 1964. This is the present day Zambia. So we have these three in summary here: the pre-colonial, before 1890, where we lived in the villages with the kings and queens. Then we have the colonial period, where the white people or the British people came to rule us between 1890s and 1964. And we now have the post-colonial between 1964 to the present day. Let's move to the colonial rule by the British. Now, the British arrived in 1890s, just like I indicated earlier. The intention of colonizing the area was to exploit the rich mineral resources of copper and coal. This simply means that the place we now call Zambia was very rich in copper and coal. This is what attracted these colonial masters or the British to come into our land. Now, when the British came into our land, they divided the area into two. That is the northwestern Rhodesia, which was made of copper belt and the provinces to the west. Then there was the northeastern Rhodesia, which was made of Central Province and the provinces to the east. Now, these boundaries were made in the year 1890, this year here. They were made in the year 1890. In case you see a question in an exam asking you to say in which year were the boundaries drawn, they were drawn in the 1890. Now, here's the map showing these two territories: the northwest Rhodesia, the northwestern Rhodesia, and the northeastern Rhodesia. So this is the part of the northeast Rhodesia and the northwest Rhodesia. So these two, the combination of these two made what we now call Zambia. The northwestern Rhodesia came under the direct rule of the British South African Company, known as the BSA Company, in 1895. Now, the BSA combined northeast and northwestern Rhodesia in 1911 to form northern Rhodesia. Now, here is what we are saying here. In the year 1890, the northeastern Rhodesia and the northwestern Rhodesia were brought together. In civics, we say amalgamated, in case you see such a word in a past paper. They were amalgamated or brought together in the year 1911. So when they were brought together, they formed what we now call, or what we used to call Rhodesia, or Northern Rhodesia. And the founder of the BSA company was John Cecil Rhodes, a rich British man who started his operations in South Africa. Now, the company also controlled Southern Rhodesia, which is also known as Zimbabwe today. Now, the BSA company, the BSA company's concern was to exploit minerals and administer the territory by taxing the African people on behalf of the British government. So the BSA company was working on behalf of, the British government. Now, they also traded with African chiefs and drew up treaties. Now, when we say treaties, we mean agreements which were agreed between the African chiefs and the white people or the colonial masters. So the colonial masters were coming up with agreements with the African chiefs. Now, one of the greatest chiefs at that time, or should we say kings, was King Lewanika, the king of the Barotse Kingdom. Now, this Barossa Kingdom is what by that time was territorially known as the Northwestern Rhodesia. Now, before independence, Zambia was known as Northern Rhodesia. Now, this man you're seeing in the corner here is John Cecil Rhodes. In case you're wondering what this man, John Cecil Rhodes, used to look like. Now, by 1924, the company or the BSA company handed over power to the British Colonial Office, and Northern Rhodesia became a protectorate. Now, when we say protectorate, we mean a country that is ruled by another country, or a country that is being controlled by another country. So in this case, Northern Rhodesia became a British protectorate. So this meant that the area was controlled by the British in the way that was supposed to be, or in the way that was supposed to protect the local people, although this was not the case in reality. Northern Rhodesia was now a colony ruled by the British government. By 1924, the company handed over power to the British office, which is now Northern Rhodesia. Now, here is a map showing some of the countries in Africa which were colonized by different European countries. Now, I'm deliberately showing you this map to make you understand to say it was not only Zambia or Northern Rhodesia which was being colonized by the British and other European countries. So most of the African countries suffered the same, except two notable countries. I'm showing you this map for you to understand to say there are two notable countries which were not subjected to colonialism. And these are the Empire of Ethiopia, which Italy wanted to colonize, but it failed. It was defeated. So Ethiopia has never been colonized, as well as Liberia. These two countries have never been colonized. They failed to defeat Ethiopia, the Italians. And Liberia was somewhat protected by the USA, the United States of America, because most of the settlers here in Liberia were former slaves in the USA who went back to this land and settled here. So these are the two notable countries which were never colonized by the Europeans. Now, I'm taking you straight into exam past paper questions, just to make you have an insight on how important some of these concepts We are just from, discussing. Now, this question is extracted from the ECZ 2021 past paper, Social Studies 2021 past paper. Now, the question says, which two colonial territories joined in 1911 to form one country? Now, this is very easy for us because we just discussed this. Is it A, Northeastern and Northwestern Rhodesia? Is it B, Northern and Southern Rhodesia? Is it C, Northern Rhodesia and Nyasaland? Is it D, Southern Rhodesia and Nyasaland? The answer here is definitely A, which is Northeastern and Northwestern Rhodesia. So these two countries these two territories were brought together to form one country in 1911. This is what we earlier discussed. Next question. From the same past paper, last paper, 2021. Zambia's political boundaries were drawn in the year. Now, here is what we talked about. This is very simple for us. Is it A, 1890? Is it B, 1911? Is it C, 1964? Or D, 1980? The answer is definitely A, 1890. It was in 1890 Zambia's political boundaries were drawn by the colonial masters. Another question. Now, question 1A. Zambia became a British protectorate in the year 1924. What is meant by the concept protectorate? You remember, between 1890 and 1924, Zambia was ruled by the BSA company, which was representing the British government. But in 1924, the British government came and took over from the BSA company, and Zambia, or should we say Northern Rhodesia, became a British protectorate. Now, what is meant by the concept protectorate? This is what I explained. I made mention to say a protectorate is a country that is being ruled by another country. You can also say a protectorate is a country that is politically and economically controlled by a more powerful country and also defended by a more powerful country. For example, Zambia was controlled and protected by the British. If you look at question 1B, which says, describe features of colonial rule in Zambia from 1890 to 1964. Now, this is now very interesting because we're going to look at this in our next meeting. We'll look at the features of the colonial rule in Zambia and we'll discuss them in detail. So I'm just going to give you an insight on what we shall discuss in our next meeting. I want you to understand to say these colonial masters, when they came to Zambia, they had a mission. So we'll discuss ways through which the local people, were treated, and we shall also look at the most common features. So what we'll look at in our next meeting will be something like this. So that was a very common characteristic. So here is what we're going to look at in our next meeting. I would like to thank you for your time. Have a lovely day ahead.